At 19, Reggie Cole's life was turned upside down the moment he walked into one of America's meanest prisons. He found himself face to face with the prison boss, El Diablo, and it turned very unpleasant. But what from his rough upbringing in the mean streets of Los Angeles brought him here? And how did a violent clash become a twist of battered chance? Every step of his path leaves you guessing. What really is the fate of Reggie Cole? Ready to find out? Reggie's journey to this harsh life did not start behind bars. He grew up on the mean streets of Los Angeles in the mid-1980s. His family moved into one of the roughest neighborhoods where gangs ruled and violence was a part of everyday life. Reggie was just a kid when his world was filled with fear and uncertainty. He was the youngest of 4 siblings. His older brother Kenny, only 15 at the time, got mixed up with a dangerous local gang. This gang life was full of risks and violence. One terrible day, a rival gang, known as the Hostile Gang, attacked Kenny's group. In the chaos, Kenny was gunned down right before Reggie's eyes. Losing his brother left Reggie heartbroken and confused. Instead of finding comfort in his studies or his family, Reggie slowly drifted toward the life his brother had chosen. He started selling weed and small amounts of drugs, a quick way to make money on the rough streets. His life soon turned to crime, and he was caught in a cycle that would eventually lead him to prison. Reggie's childhood was marked by loss, pain, and a growing desire to survive by any means necessary. As Reggie grew older, his choices deepened his trouble with the law. At the age of 19, a tragic event sealed his fate. A murder took place near a well-known brothel in 1995, and Reggie was wrongly linked to the crime. Even though he maintained his innocence, the evidence was twisted in his favor. The trial was fast, and soon he was sentenced to life in prison. On the day of his sentencing, Reggie was forced to wear the bright orange jumpsuit of a new inmate. He boarded a rickety bus with other prisoners, the vehicle rumbling through long, empty roads bordered by nothing but endless desert. Through the grimy windows, he watched as the landscape changed from city lights to a barren wilderness. Soon, the infamous Calipatria prison came into view, a large, isolated compound that looked like a fortress built to hold the worst of society's outcasts. The moment Reggie stepped off the bus, he was hit by a strong, unpleasant smell and a heavy feeling of dread. Calipatria was nothing like he had ever seen. It was a hot afternoon in 1995 when 19-year-old Reggie Cole first set foot in Calipatria prison, one of the toughest jails in America. The prison was surrounded by huge, high fences, some of them electrified. These fences were there to stop anyone from escaping. Every inch of the area felt harsh and unforgiving. Inside the prison, things were even tougher. Reggie was led through long, dark corridors where the sound of footsteps echoed against cold concrete walls. When he reached his cell, he saw that it was small, bare, and built like a box. The room had 4 cement walls, a metal door with a tiny window, a single bed, a sink, and a toilet. It felt more like a tomb than a place to live. In his cell, he found a silent cellmate who barely looked up when Reggie entered. Even though they were forced to share the same space, neither spoke a word. In that lonely cell, Reggie realized that every day in Calipatria was a fight for survival, and he had to learn the rules quickly if he wanted to live another day. In this brutal world, showing weakness could get you killed. Reggie soon learned that silence might keep you safe, but sometimes you have to fight back. In the first few weeks, he watched as other inmates suffered at the hands of their fellow prisoners. One day, a group of inmates attacked Reggie's cellmate while he slept. No one stepped in to help, not the other prisoners, and not even the guards. It was a harsh lesson. If you were seen as weak, you were an easy target. Not long after, Reggie knew he had to do something to protect himself. With very little, he got creative. All he had was an old toothbrush, and with a piece of stone, he began sharpening it until its tip was as sharp as a small knife. This toothbrush, now turned into a crude weapon, symbolized his determination to survive in a place where every day was a battle. Survival in Calipatria was not just about having a weapon, it was also about knowing who to trust. The prison yard was filled with gangs, each one trying to protect its own members. New inmates like Reggie had to earn trust before they could join a gang. Reggie kept his head down at first, watching from a distance. He needed to find a group that would have his back. After some time, Reggie was noticed by a gang called the 49. They were known in Calipatria for sticking together and looking out for each other. Finally, Reggie found a bit of safety in their numbers. With the protection of the 49th, he started to feel that he might have a chance to survive in this harsh world. But even with a gang by his side, there was one figure who cast a long shadow over the entire prison. That was El Diablo. El Diablo was a massive, fearsome man who ruled Calipatria like a king. He controlled everything inside the prison, from the smuggling of drugs to the flow of contraband. His reputation was built on fear and violence. Even the guards, who were few in number, showed him special treatment because they knew that upsetting him could bring chaos to the prison. For Reggie, staying away from El Diablo was a matter of life and death. Everyone knew that any wrong move around him could result in a brutal beating, or worse. Even though Reggie had now found some protection with the 49ers, he always tried to avoid catching El Diablo's attention. One day, while Reggie was doing his daily work outside in the prison yard, a sudden event made him realize that he could no longer hide in the background. The guards were doing a routine search after break time. During the search, a small, handmade knife was found on the ground. The knife was known to be connected to El Diablo's closest crew member. As the guards asked who the knife belonged to, a heavy silence fell over the yard. Every prisoner knew that speaking up could be dangerous. The eyes of everyone turned to Reggie when one of the guards singled him out. With a clear, strong voice, Reggie simply said, "No, it's not mine." Those few words would change everything. To many, it was a small act of defiance, but in that harsh world, even a tiny sign of resistance could have big consequences. Reggie's answer made him stand out. Now, everyone in the prison saw him as someone who might not back down when pushed too far, even if that meant becoming an enemy of El Diablo. In November 2000, tensions in the yard reached a boiling point. One ordinary day, while Reggie was walking in the prison yard, he noticed that El Diablo was coming straight toward him. There was no hiding or sneaking around. El Diablo walked directly up to him with an intimidating presence. Reggie's heart raced as he saw the feared king of the prison closing in. Before Reggie could even think of running, El Diablo grabbed him by the shoulder. In a swift, brutal move, El Diablo stabbed Reggie in the waist with a sharp knife. The wound wasn't meant to kill, it was a message, a clear sign that Reggie's defiance would not be tolerated. Reggie fell to the ground, clutching his bleeding side, shocked by the sudden attack. In that moment, the entire yard went silent. Every prisoner, even those who tried to hide, could not ignore what had just happened. The message was clear. If you went against El Diablo, you paid a heavy price. But Reggie, despite the pain, was not ready to back down. Later that day, while the guards were busy with a routine lineup for a search, Reggie decided he would not be an easy target. He reached into a small hiding spot where he had stashed his makeshift toothbrush knife. When he saw El Diablo turning his back to be searched by a guard, Reggie seized his chance. With a burst of strength and a surge of determination, Reggie charged forward. In a split second, he raised his hand and plunged the knife into El Diablo's throat. The yard erupted into chaos. For a moment, no one could believe what they had seen. The feared El Diablo, the ruler of Calipatria, had been stabbed by a new inmate. El Diablo staggered back, his eyes wide with shock and pain. He clutched his neck as blood poured out, and he fell to the ground. Reggie, knowing that this act would mark him forever as a rebel, immediately dropped to the ground with his hands raised in surrender, shouting, "I know what I did. I know what I did." The guards rushed in and quickly pinned him down. That day, Reggie became the declared enemy of El Diablo and, by extension, the enemy of the prison's established order. The stabbing of El Diablo sent shockwaves throughout Calipatria. For many inmates, it was hard to imagine that someone like Reggie could take on a man who had ruled the prison with an iron fist for so long. The guards, on the other hand, were in a state of high alert. They locked down the prison, and for the rest of that day and night, the air was filled with tension and fear of what might come next. Reggie was taken away and placed in solitary confinement, a small, dark cell where he was left alone with his thoughts and pain. This was his second major crime now. The killing of El Diablo meant that Reggie faced not only the anger of the prison gangs, but also a much harsher punishment. In solitary, time seemed to slow down. Every minute felt heavy with regret and the fear of what would come next. Reggie knew that his life had taken a turn from which there was no easy return. Yet, deep inside, he also felt a strange sense of pride. For the first time, he had stood up for himself in a place where most would simply accept their fate. While Reggie was locked away, his case began to draw a lot of attention. Out of all the lawyers, one man stood out, Christopher Blort. Unlike the others, Christopher really dug into the case. As he reviewed old files and talked to witnesses, he found things that just didn't add up. The murder near the brothel in 1995 was full of holes. For example, a bullet wound on Reggie's leg turned out to be from when he was only 13, not from the shooting that got him convicted. And the angle of the bullet's entry? It clearly didn't match the story of a street-level shooter. Slowly, Christopher began to piece it all together. Could it be that Reggie had been set up? Just wait. What else did Christopher uncover that flipped the case on its head? By the time the court changed its mind, Reggie had already spent 8 long years in solitary confinement. Imagine being alone for that long, with only your thoughts for company. Yet, thanks to Christopher's hard work and all the mounting evidence, a tiny ray of hope shone through. With his sentence reduced, Reggie was told he had only 2 more years to serve before he could finally be free. Those 2 years felt like a lifetime, and every day was a battle for hope. And then, in 2009, after 16 grueling years behind bars, including 10 in solitary, Reggie Cole finally walked out of Calipatria prison. Freedom was sweet, but the memories of his long ordeal would stick with him forever. What would life on the outside really be like after such a harsh journey? Getting out wasn't the end of the struggle. The world had changed, and Reggie's life was far from easy. Determined to rebuild, he fought in court to clear his name and seek justice for all those lost years. In 2017, his persistence paid off. The city of Los Angeles awarded him $5.2 million in compensation. While no sum of money could erase the pain or the memories of his time in prison, it was a small step toward a brighter future. Reggie's story is a wild ride, from a setup and years in solitary to a hard-fought victory that turned his life around. So, what comes next for Reggie Cole, the man who beat the odds? We're all looking for it. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the life of Reggie Cole, America's most dangerous prisoner. His story is filled with pain, struggle, and moments of fierce defiance, but it is also a tale of hope and the will to survive.